Hello everyone and welcome back to the NPC Dungeon. Today I have a very special story prepared. It's all about a character that I played not too long ago. I'm really happy to tell it and I'm super excited for it. So let's just get right into it. So what happened? Well, Screech was a Kenku detective. For those of you who don't know, Kenku are short, raven-like people based very loosely off of creatures from Japanese mythology, and at least in D&D, they're named by the noises and sounds they make in childhood. This one was named Screech. I decided to make him a rogue and go with the inquisitive subclass. He couldn't roll below an 18 when trying to detect lies, and I believe he couldn't roll below a 10 in any average investigation or perception check. His intelligence wasn't super high, but he had the skills and investigation to make up for it. Besides, his main talent was with people. He could read them like a book and convince pretty much anyone of anything. That, along with his ability to be strangely intimidating, lie like no one's business, and his natural Kenku memory and affinity for mimicking sounds and voices around him, he was definitely a force to be reckoned with. And despite all this, he lived in a rundown apartment in the middle of a crowded city along with his bodyguard, an elderly Tortle named Wu. He was 112 years old and took every chance he had to tell anyone and everyone. He lived his whole life in his small Tortle village and decided to finally break away and explore the world for the first time. He ran into Screech on the way and just decided to follow the young man along his adventures. One morning, however, Screech received a letter from none other than the Empress herself, asking him to meet her at the Colosseum for a race that would occur. While there, she would discuss a potential job. He'd recently gained some renown after solving a string of serial murders, catching the gnomish man behind it all, as he apparently stole an artifact from a nearby temple. And you better believe that he's going to bring Wu with him. But first to find him. Wu was an early riser, but Screech knew where to find him. Had his favorite tea shop. When Screech arrived, Wu was already there, but he had already struck up a conversation with a young bard by the name Abzi. Screech recognized her clothes, her style, and realized that it was indicative of a prominent family of a nearby city, and wanted nothing to do with her. He pulled Wu away, but boy was he surprised when Abzi started walking in the same direction. Apparently, she was also given such an invitation. He introduced himself as Clipper, giving her a fake name that then she used to compose a limerick about him, talking about how grumpy he was, and they continued on. When they met with the Empress, she explained that the daughter of a prominent figure in a nearby city had gone missing, and it was up to the group to find her. She told them where she was believed to be held, and paid them with several hundred gold in advance, with promises of more upon successful completion. Gold which Wu and Abzi prominently gambled away on the races. They had planned on using magic and illusions to rig the race, but ultimately decided not to. Maybe they should have? Either way, the moment the Empress left the room, Screech leapt up and began searching everything and anything she touched and was even near to. He was quite paranoid, apparently, and finding nothing though. And on the way to the boat that she had procured for them for passage, he kept his head on a swivel, spotting all the spies the Empress had sent after them. Abzi also let it slip that she was in the business of springing falsely incarcerated people from prison, and so she wasn't a huge fan of Screech, who she saw as a cop. Either way, they boarded the boat, greeted the captain, and set sail, but it wasn't long before their ship began coming closer and closer, almost uncomfortably close, before sliding up next to theirs, side by side, cannons aimed, and captain at the helm, shouting for them to surrender. But Screech was ready for a fight, analyzing each opposing crew member one by one for weaknesses. He had his crossbow aimed and leveled at them as Abzi stood up and approached the railing. She used her capabilities as a bard to charm the captain and convince the rest to lay down their weapons and join them, acting now as an escort to provide even safer passage. But Screech wasn't fully convinced. He spent the remainder of the day searching the boat for anything suspicious. Below the main deck, he stumbled across a room filled with a few barrels. He popped one of them open and found a sight he had hoped to never see again. Countless shimmering red crystals lined the interior. He paused, just staring off as his companions found him. Not even Wu had seen him in this state before. See, Screech had nothing as a child, and really no one either. He had to steal to live. That was until a religious orphanage took him in and gave him a home. He was happy until he stumbled upon their true practices. They concealed a cult, bent on using these crystals to experiment with undeath, doing countless horrid tests, and they then tried to kill Screech upon his discovery. He barely escaped and used his talents to ensure this would never happen to anyone else again. Wu decided it was time to have a few words with the captain in his quarters after learning about this. Screech snuck in behind him and watched from the outside. But Wu wasn't the subtlest, and it wasn't long before the captain pulled out a small flintlock pistol and leveled it at Wu. No one threatened Wu. Screech leapt up from the shadows where he was concealed and pounced on the captain, wresting the gun from his grasp as Wu bonked him with the club that he had with him. Don't underestimate that turtle. He might have been an old turtle, but he was tough. However, the moment he backed away, Screech aimed the gun at the captain and began barking questions at the man. Wu had no context for these questions were about, or where they came from, but Screech wanted to know where exactly the crystals were going, and who was directing it. But honestly, the captain didn't know much, so they had let him go. But with the fact that he attacked first, and with what they knew about him, it wasn't very hard to convince him to keep his mouth shut. The party reconvened in their quarters and made Screech explain himself. He finally told them the full story and leveled his gaze on Abzi. See, told you I wasn't a cop. I have to work around the law sometimes, and I think your cause is a worthy one. I might have some connections that can help you out. After this conversation, Wu and Absy went back up top to play music for the crew, but Screech stayed behind. He wanted to be left alone. Of course, this didn't last long. Eventually, he went up with the rest of them to listen to the music as the sun descended. He decided to hide in the crowd, but Wu saw him. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed it, and thanks so much for watching. Feel free to check out this week's other video, where I talk about how to pull pranks on your players the right way, and come back next week where I talk about large-scale social encounters and tell a story from my current campaign where my players rob a train. Again, thanks so much for watching. Feel free to check out the 2 videos appearing on your screen right now. Until next time, let's learn something.